The dust kicked up around his boots as Hank Owens rode into the canyon just after sunrise, tracking the stolen cattle that had disappeared from the McAllister ranch 3 days prior. And what he found instead changed everything he thought he knew about survival and trust in the Arizona Territory of 1878. She was curled against the red rock face like a wounded animal, her dark hair matted with dirt and blood, her dress torn at the shoulder, and clutched tight in her right hand was a hunting knife with dried blood on the blade. Hank dismounted slowly, his own hand instinctively going to his revolver before he stopped himself. This woman was no threat to him. The knife was not for attack. It was for protection while she slept, a last line of defense against whatever had driven her out here into the wilderness alone. He understood why without needing to ask. Hank had seen that desperate grip before. His own sister had died 5 years back, killed by a man who should have protected her, and he had found her too late. This woman, whoever she was, had escaped something. Someone. The bruises on her arms told part of the story. The blood on the knife told another. And the way she slept so lightly that his footsteps immediately brought her awake, scrambling backward with the blade raised, told him everything else. "Easy now," Hank said, raising both hands. "I am not here to hurt you." Her eyes were wild, green as spring grass, and she looked like she might bolt like a startled deer. She was young, maybe 22 or 23, with a heart-shaped face that would have been pretty if not for the fear etched into every line. Her breathing came fast and shallow. "Stay back," she said, her voice hoarse. "I will use this." "I believe you," Hank replied calmly. He was 26, tall and lean from years of ranch work, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of strong coffee. "But you do not need to. My name is Hank Owens. I work for the McAllister Ranch outside Prescott. I was tracking stolen cattle, but I would say you need help more than I need to find those steers right now." She studied him for a long moment, the knife still raised. Her hand trembled slightly. "Why should I trust you?" "You should not," Hank said honestly. "You do not know me, but you are hurt, and you have been out here at least a day or two by the look of things. When did you last eat?" Her stomach answered for her with a loud growl. She flinched at the sound, embarrassment flickering across her face. The knife lowered slightly. "I have jerky and hardtack in my saddlebag," Hank continued, "and water. I will put them on that rock there and step back. You can take them when you are ready." He moved slowly, keeping his hands visible, and retrieved the food and his canteen from his horse. He set them on a flat boulder about 10 feet from where she crouched, then backed away to give her space. She watched him like a hawk watching a snake, but after a moment she darted forward, grabbed the supplies, and retreated to her spot against the canyon wall. She drank first, long gulps that suggested she had been dangerously dehydrated. Then she tore into the jerky with her teeth, still keeping the knife in one hand and her eyes on him. "What is your name?" Hank asked gently. She chewed and swallowed before answering. "Willa Zimmerman." "Where are you from, Willa?" Her jaw tightened. "Does it matter?" "I suppose not," Hank said. "But if someone is looking for you, I should know whether to point them the wrong direction or not." Something like hope flickered in her eyes, quickly suppressed. "If someone comes asking about a woman, you tell them you saw no one." "That is easy enough," Hank agreed. "Though from the looks of things, I would guess whoever you are running from already thinks you are dead." Willa's hand went unconsciously to her ribs and she winced. "He might." "I made sure it looked that way." Hank felt his chest tighten with anger at the casual way she said it, as if faking one's own death to escape was just another Tuesday. "Husband? Does it matter?" she repeated, but there was less hostility in her voice now. "It does if he might come after you again." Willa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "He cannot come after anyone anymore. I made sure of that too. The blood on the knife suddenly made more sense. Hank nodded slowly. Self-defense. Does anyone ever believe that? Her voice was bitter. When a woman kills a man, even a man who beat her bloody every night for 2 years, even a man who said he would kill her if she ever tried to leave. I believe it, Hank said simply. My sister could not escape her husband. If she had been brave enough to do what you did, she might still be alive. Willa's eyes widened slightly. She studied his face as if searching for a lie and found none. The knife finally lowered to her lap, though she did not let it go. I have been running for 6 days, she said quietly. Since I left him bleeding in our cabin outside Phoenix. I took his horse and rode north, then let the horse go and walked the rest. I thought if people found the horse without me, they would assume I fell or got taken by animals. I did not know where to go. I just knew I had to get far away. Phoenix is 100 miles south, Hank said. You walked most of that. I stole another horse 2 days ago from a trading post, but it went lame yesterday. I had to leave it. She looked at her torn dress, her battered boots. I did not plan this well. I just ran. You are alive, Hank pointed out. That seems like a good plan to me. Willa's laugh was short and humorless. For now, but I have no money, no supplies, and no idea what to do next. Hank sat down on the sandy ground, making himself less threatening. Prescott is about 15 miles northeast. It is a decent town, growing fast since the territorial capital moved there back in '67. There is work for people who want it and not too many questions asked about where folks come from. I could take you there. Why would you help me? Willa asked suspiciously. What do you want? Nothing, Hank said firmly. I do not want anything from you except to know that you are safe. I could not help my sister, but I can help you. That is enough. Willa's eyes filled with tears that she angrily blinked away. I do not need pity. Good, because I am not offering any. I am offering a ride to town and maybe some help finding work. The McAllister Ranch is always looking for help with cooking and washing. It is not glamorous, but it is honest work and the pay is fair. I can work, Willa said quickly. I am strong. I can cook and clean, and I know how to tend animals. My father had a farm before he died. Then it is settled, Hank said, standing up and brushing the dust from his pants. We will ride back to town together. I will tell Mrs. McAllister I found you stranded after your horse went lame. She does not need to know anything else. Willa stood as well, still gripping the knife. She looked at Hank for a long moment, then slowly slid the blade into her belt. If you try anything, you will gut me like a fish, Hank finished. I understand. I would not expect anything less. For the first time, a tiny smile flickered across Willa's face. It transformed her features, giving him a glimpse of who she might have been before fear and violence had carved their marks into her. His heart did something strange in his chest, a flutter he had not felt in years. He told himself it was just sympathy, just the desire to help someone who needed it. But as Willa walked toward his horse, limping slightly from what looked like a twisted ankle, Hank admitted to himself that it was more than that. There was something fierce and unbreakable in her, a core of steel that had kept her alive when most people would have given up. He found himself wanting to know more about her, to see that smile again, to be the reason the fear eventually left her eyes. Can your horse carry both of us? Willa asked, eyeing the big bay gelding. Copper has carried heavier loads, Hank assured her, but you will have to ride close. Are you all right with that? Willa's jaw tightened, but she nodded. I will manage. Hank mounted first, then reached down to help pull her up behind him. She hesitated for just a moment before taking his hand, and he felt the calluses on her palm, the strength in her grip. She settled behind him on the saddle, her arms wrapping loosely around his waist, her body tense. If you need to stop, just say so, Hank told her over his shoulder. I will be fine. They rode out of the canyon in silence. the morning sun climbing higher and turning the red rocks brilliant shades of orange and gold. Hank kept Copper to a steady walk, both to conserve the horse's energy and to avoid jarring Willa's injured ribs. After about an hour, he felt her relax slightly against his back, her grip loosening a fraction. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You are welcome. I mean it. You could have left me there. Most men would have." "Then most men are fools," Hank replied. "Besides, I told you. I need to make up for not saving my sister. Helping you helps me too." "What was her name?" "Hannah. Hannah Owens before she married. Hannah Crawford after." He paused. "She was 2 years younger than me, smart as a whip, funny, kind to everyone. She married a man from Tucson who seemed respectable. He had a good job at the bank, nice clothes, pretty manners. None of us knew what he was really like until it was too late." "I am sorry," Willa said softly. "Me too." They rode in companionable silence for a while longer. The landscape gradually shifted from the dramatic red rocks to gentler rolling hills dotted with juniper and pinyon pine. In the distance, Hank could see the smoke from Prescott's chimneys rising into the clear blue sky. "That is Prescott ahead," he told Willa. "We will go straight to the McAllister Ranch. It is just on the outskirts of town." "What do I say when people ask questions?" "Say as little as possible. Tell them you came from California looking for a fresh start. Lots of people come west for that reason. No one will think twice about it. And if someone from Phoenix comes looking, we will deal with that if it happens," Hank said firmly. "But Phoenix is a long way away, and a dead man tells no tales. If you left things looking like an accident or like you both died, no one will have reason to come searching in Prescott." Willa was quiet, but he felt her nod against his back. The McAllister Ranch sprawled across several hundred acres of good grazing land. The main house was a solid adobe structure with a wraparound porch and flower boxes that Mrs. McAllister tended with fierce dedication. The bunkhouse, barn, and outbuildings were all well maintained, speaking to the prosperity of the operation. Hank rode directly to the main house and dismounted, then helped Willa down. She swayed slightly when her feet hit the ground, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "Easy now. When did you last sleep for more than an hour?" "I do not remember," Willa admitted. The front door opened and Mrs. McAllister emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a formidable woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes took in Willa's condition immediately, and her expression softened. "Hank Owens. Who do we have here?" "Mrs. McAllister, this is Miss Willa Zimmerman. I found her stranded out in the canyon country. Her horse went lame and she has been walking for days. She is looking for work, and I remembered you saying you needed help with the washing and cooking now that Mary Henderson moved to Flagstaff." Mrs. McAllister descended the porch steps and came closer, her gaze sweeping over Willa with professional assessment. "Is that so? Do you have experience with cooking, Miss Zimmerman?" "Yes, madam," Willa said, straightening her spine despite her exhaustion. "I can cook for large groups, and I know how to manage a household. I can also sew and tend to animals if needed." "Where are you from, child?" "California, madam. I came east looking for opportunities." Mrs. McAllister's eyes flickered to the bruises on Willa's arms, barely visible beneath the torn sleeves, and something knowing passed across her face. But all she said was, "I see. Well, we can certainly use the help. The pay is $20 a month plus room and board. You would have a small room off the kitchen, and you would be expected to help with all the household tasks. Is that acceptable?" "More than acceptable, madam. Thank you." "Do not thank me yet. I work my people hard, though I work myself harder. Come inside and I will show you where you will be sleeping. You look like you need a bath and some rest before anything else." Willa glanced back at Hank, uncertainty in her eyes. He gave her an encouraging nod. "Go on, Mrs. McAllister is tough but fair. You will be safe here. Will you?" Willa started, then stopped herself. "Will I see you again? I work on this ranch," Hank said with a slight smile. "You will see me every day at meals if nothing else." Something like relief crossed her face, and she nodded before following Mrs. McAllister into the house. Hank led Copper to the barn, his mind full of thoughts about Willa Zimmerman and her green eyes, and the way she had felt pressed against his back during the ride. He told himself again that it was just concern, just the desire to help, but he knew he was lying to himself. The next few weeks established a routine. Willa proved to be exactly as capable as she had claimed, taking over the kitchen duties with quiet efficiency. She cooked meals for the dozen ranch hands, washed clothes, mended torn shirts, and generally made herself indispensable. Mrs. McAllister, who rarely praised anyone, told Hank privately that Willa was the best help she had hired in 10 years. But Willa remained distant, skittish around the male ranch hands, and Hank often saw her touch the knife she still kept in her belt, as if reassuring herself it was there. She slept in the small room off the kitchen with the door firmly locked, and more than once Hank heard her wake in the night with muffled cries that she quickly silenced. He made a point of speaking to her every day, casual conversations that slowly built trust. He learned that she was 23, that her father had died when she was 17, that she had married at 19 to a man named Gerald who had seemed kind until the wedding night. She did not speak details, but Hank could fill in the blanks from the shadows in her eyes. In turn, he told her about growing up on a ranch in New Mexico territory, about coming to Arizona after Hannah died, about his hope of saving enough money to start his own spread someday. Willa listened carefully, asking questions, and gradually the fear in her eyes when she looked at him began to fade. One evening in late September, Hank was working late in the barn, mending tack by lamplight when Willa appeared in the doorway. She had a basket over her arm and looked hesitant. "I brought you some supper," she said. "Mrs. McAllister said you missed dinner." "That is kind of you." Hank set aside the bridle he was working on and wiped his hands. "I lost track of time." Willa came closer and set the basket on a hay bale. She had filled it with cold chicken, fresh bread, and a slice of apple pie. "You work too hard," says the woman who is up before dawn and works until after dark every day. "That is different. I owe you. I owe Mrs. McAllister and this ranch." "You do not owe anyone anything," Hank said firmly. "You earn your keep with your work. The debt is paid." Willa sat down on the hay bale, looking at him thoughtfully. "Why are you so kind to me? Why would I not be? Most men." She trailed off, then tried again. "Most men see a woman alone and think she is available for whatever they want. But you have never looked at me that way. You have never pushed or demanded or expected anything." "I would never do that," Hank said quietly. "What was done to you was wrong. I know that. Any decent man knows that. You are one of the few decent men I have met." The lamplight cast soft shadows across her face, and Hank realized with a start how beautiful she was now that she had had rest and food and safety. The bruises had faded weeks ago. Her hair shone clean and dark in the golden light. Her eyes no longer held quite so much fear. "I think you are brave," he said before he could stop himself. "Braver than anyone I have ever met. You saved yourself when no one else would. That takes courage most people do not have." Willa's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I was so scared." "Being scared does not make you less brave. It makes you more so, because you did what needed to be done anyway." She stood up abruptly and walked to the barn door, looking out at the darkening sky. "I have nightmares every night. I wake up thinking he is there, thinking he is going to hurt me again. And then I remember what I did and I feel sick. I killed him, Hank. I stuck a knife in his chest while he slept and I watched him die. What does that make me?" Hank stood and walked over to her, careful to leave space between them. "It makes you a survivor. It makes you someone who chose life over death. He would have killed you eventually. You know that." "I know," she whispered, "but it does not make it easier." "It will get easier," Hank promised. "Not quickly and not all at once. But one day you will wake up and realize you slept through the night. One day you will realize you have not thought about him in hours. One day you will be able to trust again." Willa turned to look at him, and in her eyes he saw something new. Not fear, not gratitude. Something warmer and more complicated. "Do you really believe that?" "I do." "Have you trusted anyone since Hannah died?" Hank considered the question honestly. "No, not until now." "What changed?" "I met someone brave enough to save herself." They stood there in the barn doorway, the evening settling around them, and something shifted between them. It was like the moment before a storm breaks, full of electricity and promise. "I should go back," Willa said finally, but she did not move. "You should," Hank agreed, also not moving. "Hank?" "Yes. Thank you for seeing me, not what happened to me, but me." "Always," he said softly. Willa reached out and squeezed his hand briefly, then turned and walked back toward the house, the empty basket swinging at her side. Hank stood in the barn doorway long after she disappeared, his hand still warm from her touch, his heart doing that strange flutter again. He was in trouble, he realized. Deep, complicated, beautiful trouble. The autumn days shortened and cooled. Prescott prepared for winter with the bustle of a growing town, and the McAllister ranch prepared for the lean months ahead. Hank found himself spending more and more time near the house, finding excuses to talk to Willa, to see her smile, to hear her laugh at his jokes. The other ranch hands noticed and teased him mercilessly, but good-naturedly. They all liked Willa, appreciated her cooking and her quiet kindness, and they approved of Hank's obvious affection for her. "When are you going to court that woman proper?" asked Charlie, one of the older hands, one afternoon while they were stringing new fence. "I do not know if she is ready for that," Hank admitted. "Only one way to find out. Ask her. It is complicated." "Love always is," Charlie said philosophically, "but complicated is better than lonely." Hank thought about that as he worked. Was he in love with Willa? The idea should have scared him, but instead it felt right. She was strong and brave and kind. She had survived horrors that would have broken most people. She made him want to be better, to build something worth having, to create the kind of home where she would always feel safe. Yes, he realized. He was in love with her. The question was what to do about it. His opportunity came on a Sunday afternoon in mid-October. Mrs. McAllister had given Willa the afternoon off, and Hank found her sitting on the porch steps, mending one of his shirts. He sat down beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "You do not have to do that on your day off." "I do not mind. It gives my hand something to do." "Willa, can I ask you something?" She looked up from her stitching. "Of course. Would you take a walk with me? There is something I want to show you." Curiosity flickered across her face. "All right." They walked together across the ranch land, following a path that led up into the low hills behind the property. Hank led her to a spot he had discovered his first week working for the McAllisters, a small rise that overlooked the valley and the town beyond. "It is beautiful," Willa breathed, taking in the view. The aspens had turned gold, splashing color across the hillsides. The sky was that brilliant blue that only happened in Arizona in autumn. "I come up here when I need to think," Hank said. "When I need to remember why I stay, why I keep working toward the future." "What future do you see?" Willa asked. "A ranch of my own. Nothing huge, just enough land to raise good cattle and horses. A house with a real wood floor and windows that let in lots of light." Maybe some children someday if I am lucky enough to find the right woman. Willa was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That sounds like a good future. It would be better with someone to share it." Hank took a breath. "Willa, I know you have been through hell. I know you have every reason not to trust any man ever again. But I need to tell you that over these past weeks, I have come to care for you deeply. More than care for you. I think I have fallen in love with you." Willa's hands went to her mouth, her eyes wide. "I am not asking you to feel the same way," Hank continued quickly. "I am not asking you for anything at all. I just need you to know that you are valued, that you are worthy of love, that what happened to you does not define your worth. You deserve happiness and safety and someone who will cherish you the way you deserve, and I would like to be that person if you will let me." "Hank," Willa whispered, "I do not know what to say. Say what you feel. Whatever that is, I will understand." Willa turned to look out over the valley, and Hank saw her wipe at her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I did not think I would ever feel safe with a man again. I did not think I would ever want to be touched or held or loved. But then you found me in that canyon and you saw past the dirt and the blood and the fear, and you treated me like a person, like someone who mattered. These past weeks, being near you, talking to you, I have started to feel again. Not just fear and anger and shame, but good things. Hope. Happiness. And yes, love." Hank's heart leapt. "Willa." She turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I am terrified. I am so scared of being hurt again, of trusting wrong, of losing myself again. But I think I love you too, Hank Owens. And that scares me more than anything because I have so much to lose now." Hank reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. "I will never hurt you. I swear on my sister's grave, on everything I hold sacred. I will spend every day of my life proving that you can trust me. I want to believe that. Then believe it. We can go as slow as you need. I am not going anywhere." Willa leaned forward and rested her forehead against his shoulder, and Hank wrapped his arms carefully around her, holding her like she was something precious and breakable. She tensed for just a moment, then relaxed into his embrace, her arms sliding around his waist. They stood there on the hillside as the sun sank lower, holding each other, and Hank felt something broken inside him begin to heal. The courtship that followed was slow and tender. Hank took his cues from Willa, never pushing, always respecting her boundaries. They took walks together on Sunday afternoons. He held her hand while they talked about their dreams and fears. He kissed her for the first time in November, a soft brush of lips that left them both trembling, and she kissed him back with a tentative joy that made his heart soar. Willa continued to heal. The nightmares grew less frequent. She laughed more easily. And gradually, she began to trust that Hank meant what he said, that he would never hurt her, that his love was real and constant and safe. In December, Hank asked her to marry him. They were in the barn again, the same place they had first spoken honestly about their feelings, and snow was falling softly outside. "I want to build that future with you," he said, holding both her hands. "I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to give you the home and the life you deserve. Will you marry me, Willa Zimmerman?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married in January of 1879 in the small church in Prescott, with Mrs. McAllister and the ranch hands as witnesses. Willa wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. McAllister had helped her make, and she carried wildflowers that Hank had somehow managed to find even in winter. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Hank kissed her gently, mindful of the public setting, and Willa smiled against his lips. They moved into a small cabin on the McAllister property, while Hank continued to save money for their own ranch. It was modest, just 2 rooms, But Willa made it a home with curtains she sewed and meals she cooked, and the love that filled every corner. Their wedding night was gentle. Hank was patient and careful, and when Willa cried, he held her and told her they had all the time in the world. Eventually, her tears turned to something else, and they came together with a tenderness that erased the shadow of her past. The months that followed were the happiest of Hank's life. He worked hard at the ranch, saving every penny he could. Willa continued to help Mrs. McAllister, though now as a friend rather than an employee. They spent their evenings together in their little cabin, talking and laughing and building the foundation of their life together. In the spring, Willa told him she was pregnant. Hank lifted her up and spun her around until she laughed and begged him to stop. They celebrated quietly that night, lying in bed with Hank's hand on her still flat stomach, talking about names and futures and all the joy that was coming. Their son was born in November of 1879, a healthy boy with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Willa's father, and he was perfect. Hank held his son for the first time and wept, overwhelmed by the responsibility and the love and the miracle of it all. Willa was a natural mother, though she confessed to Hank late one night that she had been terrified she would not know how to love a child after everything she had been through. But Thomas thrived under her care, and watching her with their son made Hank fall even more deeply in love with her. In 1881, Hank finally had enough money saved. He purchased 200 acres of land about 10 miles west of Prescott, good grazing land with a year-round creek running through it. He and Willa designed their house together, and with the help of friends from the McAllister Ranch, they built a solid home with real wood floors and big windows that let in light from every direction. They moved into their new house in the summer of 1881, when Thomas was learning to walk. Willa cried happy tears as she walked through their home, touching the walls as if she could not quite believe it was real. "This is ours," she kept saying. "Really ours. Really ours," Hank confirmed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "No one can take it from us. This is your home, Willa. Safe and yours forever." The years that followed were full of hard work and deep contentment. They built their ranch slowly and carefully, starting with a small herd of cattle and a few good horses. Hank proved to have an eye for breeding quality stock, and the Owens Ranch developed a reputation for honest dealing and excellent animals. Their daughter was born in 1883, a little girl with dark hair and a fierce spirit. They named her Hannah, after Hank's sister, and Willa said it was important to remember those who had been lost while celebrating those who were found. In 1885, another son joined the family, followed by another daughter in 1888. Their house filled with noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of a growing family. Willa never forgot where she had come from. She kept the knife that had saved her life in a drawer, wrapped in cloth, a reminder of her strength and survival. But she no longer needed to sleep with it in her hand. She slept peacefully now, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and protected and safe. She also made it her mission to help other women in situations like hers. When a woman with bruises showed up in town, Willa was there with a job offer or a place to stay. When a wife needed to escape a violent husband, Willa helped arrange safe passage. She never asked for thanks and never told Hank the details, but he knew what she was doing and loved her more for it. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January of 1889, Hank took Willa back to the hillside where he had first told her he loved her. The children were with Mrs. McAllister for the day, giving them rare time alone. "You remember standing here 10 years ago?" Hank asked. "I remember everything about that day," Willa said. "I remember being terrified and hopeful and so in love I could barely breathe." "Are you happy?" Hank asked, Truly happy, Willa took his face in her hands and looked into his eyes. I am more than happy. I am whole. You gave me back my life, Hank. You gave me a future I never thought I would have. You gave me love and safety and a family. How could I be anything but grateful? I did not do it for your gratitude. I know. You did it because you are a good man, the best man, my man. Hank kissed her then, deep and thorough, and when they finally pulled apart they were both smiling. Thank you for taking a chance on a scared woman with a knife in her hand, Willa said. Thank you for trusting me enough to put the knife down, Hank replied. They stood together on the hillside, watching the sun set over the land they had built together, and Hank thought about that morning in the canyon when he had found her sleeping with a weapon clutched in her hand. He had understood then that she was a survivor, someone who had fought for her life and won. What he had not understood was that she would become the love of his life, his partner, the mother of his children, the other half of his soul. The years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Thomas grew tall and strong, taking after his father in temperament and his mother in determination. He learned the ranch work eagerly, and Hank knew that someday the land would pass to his son and be in good hands. Hannah, their fierce daughter, had her mother's green eyes and her father's stubbornness. She was smart as a whip and announced at age 8 that she intended to be a doctor, which made both her parents smile even as they wondered how to make that happen in a territory that did not always value education for women. But Willa was determined that her daughter would have every opportunity she herself had been denied. The two younger children, James and little Sarah, filled the house with energy and mischief. James wanted to be a cowboy like his father, while Sarah, at 3 years old, was still figuring out what she wanted beyond more cookies, and to be wherever her older siblings were. In 1890, Willa organized a meeting in Prescott for women who had experienced violence in their homes. 15 women showed up that first night, hesitant and scared but desperate for connection and help. Willa shared her own story for the first time publicly, and by the time she finished, there was not a dry eye in the room. The meetings continued monthly, growing in size and impact. Willa became known throughout the territory as someone who helped women escape dangerous situations. She worked quietly with local law enforcement to ensure that women who defended themselves were treated fairly, and she never stopped being grateful for the second chance she had been given. Hank supported her work completely, even when it meant risks. Once, an angry husband showed up at their ranch looking for his wife, who Willa had helped flee to California. Hank met the man at the property line with a rifle and a calm statement that the man should turn around and never come back. The man looked at Hank's steady gaze and the rifle that never wavered and decided that maybe his wife was not worth the trouble after all. That night, Willa held Hank tight and thanked him for protecting not just her but all the women she tried to help. "You protect them," Hank corrected. "I just make sure you are safe while you do it." By 1895, the Owens Ranch was one of the most successful operations in the territory. They employed 6 full-time hands and had expanded their land holdings to nearly 500 acres. Thomas, now 16, was essentially running the day-to-day operations alongside his father. Hannah was attending a prestigious academy in California, preparing for medical school. James and Sarah were thriving in the local school, bright and happy children who knew they were loved. Hank looked at everything they had built and marveled. He was 43 years old, graying at the temples, with crow's feet from squinting into the sun for decades. Willa was 40, still beautiful, with silver threads in her dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. They had been married 16 years, and Hank loved her more with each passing day. One evening in late summer, they sat together on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over their land. The children were all occupied with various activities, giving them a rare moment of quiet. "Do you ever think about that day in the canyon?" Willa asked. "Sometimes," Hank admitted. "I think about how close I came to riding right past. I almost did, you know. I almost decided that the cattle were more important than investigating what I thought was just a shadow on the rocks." "But you did not." "But I did not. And that decision changed my entire life." Willa took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "Changed both our lives. Saved mine, really." "You saved yourself," Hank insisted, as he had insisted 100 times over the years. "I just helped you find a safe place to land." "You gave me everything," Willa said softly. "A home, a family, love, safety, purpose. Everything I have, everything I am now, started that day when you offered me water and food and did not ask for anything in return." "I got everything too," Hank pointed out. "The best partner I could have asked for, beautiful children, a life that matters. You think I did not benefit from finding you?" Willa smiled and leaned her head on his shoulder. "We saved each other then. How about that?" "I can live with that," Hank agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned pink and gold and purple. Somewhere inside the house, Sarah laughed at something James said. A horse whinnied in the corral. The evening breeze carried the scent of the pine trees that dotted their property. "Hank, yes, love, I am happy. Completely, thoroughly, gratefully happy. I wanted you to know that." Hank pulled her closer and kissed the top of her head. "I am happy too, more than I ever thought possible." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Hank thought about the young woman he had found sleeping with a knife in her hand. Desperate and frightened and so brave, she took his breath away. He thought about the trust they had built, the love they had nurtured, the life they had created together. He understood now what he had not fully grasped that morning in the canyon. He had not just saved a life. He had found his future, his purpose, his home. Not a place, but a person. And she had found the same in him. The years ahead would bring more challenges and more joys. They would see their children grow and marry and have children of their own. They would face drought and illness and all the struggles that came with life on a ranch in Arizona territory. But they would face it all together, partners in every sense of the word, bound by a love that had been forged in the hardest of circumstances and tempered into something unbreakable. And every night, Willa would fall asleep in Hank's arms, safe and loved and free. The knife that had once been her only protection now just a memory of who she had been and a reminder of how far she had come. In 1903, Arizona was moving closer to statehood. The Owens Ranch had become something of a local institution, known for quality livestock and fair dealing. Thomas had married a wonderful woman named Elizabeth and was raising his own family on a portion of the ranch land. Hannah had graduated from medical school against all odds and was practicing medicine in Phoenix, making both her parents incredibly proud. Hank was 51, Willa 48, and they were grandparents twice over. Life had been good to them, better than either had dared to hope for during those early days. One spring morning, Hank woke early to find Willa already awake, watching him with an expression he could not quite read. "What is it?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing bad," she assured him quickly. "I was just thinking about how strange life is, how one moment, one decision, one act of kindness can change everything." "You are getting philosophical in your old age," Hank teased gently. Willa swatted his arm playfully. "I am not old, but I am grateful. 25 years ago I was running for my life. I was certain I would die in that canyon, alone and afraid, and then you found me. You saw me as a person worth saving, worth knowing, worth loving. Do you know how rare that is? You made it easy," Hank said. "You were always worth it." "I love you," Willa said simply. I have loved you for 24 years, and I will love you for however many years we have left. Thank you for giving me a life worth living." "Thank you for living it with me," Hank replied, pulling her close. They spent that morning like they spent most mornings, working side by side on the ranch they had built together. They checked on the cattle, mended a section of fence, and discussed plans for the summer. It was ordinary and perfect, and exactly what Hank wanted to be doing. That evening, the whole family gathered for dinner. Thomas and Elizabeth brought their children. James, now 20, brought his new wife. Sarah, 15 and still living at home, helped her mother set the table. Even Hannah had come home from Phoenix for the weekend. As Hank looked around the table at the family he and Willa had created, his heart was full nearly to bursting. This was what they had built from nothing but determination and love. This was the future that had seemed impossible that morning in the canyon. After dinner, Hank and Willa walked together to their favorite spot on the property, a small hill that overlooked the valley. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. "You remember what I said when I asked you to marry me?" Hank asked. "You said you wanted to build a future with me," Willa replied. "You said you wanted to wake up beside me every morning and fall asleep beside me every night." "We did that," Hank said with satisfaction. "We built something real and good and lasting, and I would not change a single day of it. Not even the hard days, especially not the hard days. Those taught us what we were capable of." Willa leaned against him, and they watched the sunset in comfortable silence. After 24 years of marriage, they did not always need words. They understood each other in the way that only people who have built a life together can understand. As the first stars appeared, Willa said quietly, "I used to sleep with a knife in my hand because I was so afraid. Now I sleep with your hand in mine because I am safe. That is the difference you made in my life." "You made the same difference in mine," Hank said. "Before you, I was just going through the motions. Working, saving, planning for a future that felt empty. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to build something that mattered." "We gave each other that," Willa corrected gently. "Neither of us could have done this alone." "No," Hank agreed, "but together we did something beautiful." They stood on the hillside as darkness fell, holding each other close. Two people who had found each other when they needed it most and built a love that would last the rest of their lives. The knife that had once been Willa's desperate protection was long forgotten, replaced by the knowledge that she was loved, valued, and safe. And Hank had found what he had been searching for without knowing it. A home that was not a place but a person, a partner who was his equal in every way, a love that had transformed them both. In the years that followed, they would grow old together. They would see Arizona become a state in 1912. They would watch their grandchildren grow, and their children build their own legacies. And through it all, they would remain partners, lovers, best friends, each other's safe harbor in a world that could be cruel and unpredictable. But on this perfect spring evening in 1903, they simply stood together under the emerging stars, grateful for the life they had built and the love that sustained them, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it together. Just as they had faced everything since that morning in the canyon, when a cowboy found a woman sleeping with a knife in her hand and understood, without needing to ask, exactly why she held on so tight.